video essayists, I think that they have a much bigger onus on being correct. Way bigger than a live streamer. Because, I mean, if you really even just think about it, if I say something incorrect, I can correct myself in the same sentence. Because I'm freewheeling up here, right? Doesn't mean like everything that I say that's wrong is excusable. The criticisms that I make against like Vosh, for instance, kind of stand. But also, because of the way that live streams work, I can also take call-ins and debate, conflict, and kind of live be challenged on stuff, even with the comment section and shit that pops up. So I am not unassailable. But with video essayists, they make something and then they're gone, right? It's basically a created record. It's not with any non-live performance. It's out there and it's done. And I think because of that, you have a much larger onus on being as accurate and exhaustive in your facts as possible. And I think a lot of the issue with video essayist, quote unquote, content from her era, from the ContraPoints Philosophy Tube coming up era that included other people like Samson, Mule, and shit, people that did Soul Bunny that did takedown videos and shit. I think the issue there was that there was a lot of people that were doing the right thing, right? I don't think I can really call out a lot of H-Bomber Guy's research and his attention to detail. He's pretty solid on it. I mean, everybody could always be bigger. It's like a known thing in academia. You'll never be perfect. It's kind of like what I was talking about with journalism. You can't be fully exhaustive because you'll just literally never stop writing. It's the fallacy of why didn't you include this when it doesn't actually affect the general argument or the main fact being presented is basically the same thing as to make something from scratch. First, you have to create the world. So, you couldn't have made this from scratch because you bought an ingredient when you did. It's like, oh, okay, I have flour, water, yeast, salt, and sugar. I made a loaf of bread. But it's not from scratch because I didn't mill the flour, or I didn't like cultivate the yeast. So it's not really from scratch. It defeats the purpose and kind of like dilutes the meaning of the word from scratch in order to try to prove a point that doesn't even need to be proven. But it's really just to like kind of cast aspersions. And that's the issue with a lot of academic work. And why it kind of gets into this gray area. And that was one of my bigger concerns with video essayists. If you're doing a fun who gives a shit video essay kind of deal, like, oh my God, like aren't these conspiracy theories crazy about Silent Hill? Like, okay, whatever. Non-exhaustive. That's fine. Okay. Hopefully you played the games and like looked up to make sure your assumption about what happens in them is correct. That's about as exhaustive as you have to be. But I do think with like Philosophy Tube and people that sort of took her idea of how to make stuff and kind of wanted to go into that high presentation, high glamour, high profile video essayist content, basically taking a Channel Awesome video essay really and just turning every slider on the quality meter to 10, you know what I mean? They went into that and there was a high focus on aesthetic appeal, I think, for a lot of those individuals, which is why, the people that I've called out, and I don't think they're necessarily bad people. I don't think Noah Samson's as bad of a guy as he gets for a rap on this side. Is Noah Samson cringe? Who is not? Okay, you can't have that mustache and bisexual lighting and not have at least one or two cringe takes. I mean, you put bisexual lighting up immediately after it became passé. You're kind of appealing to an already aged out crowd. I'm being mean, but like that guy kind of couches all of his opinions in the fact that they're his opinions. It's okay, but still. Okay, so this is the thing, and he's got his delivery and some stuff flashes up. It's kind of like the gamer bro version of some of these things. And then you get into the other people like that, and you have the Abigail Thorne sort of breakdown, and who's trying to appeal to stuff. I'd say his shit is more kind of like H-Bomber Guy with like the kind of ContraPoints like appeal to, very strictly lefty culture talking points. You know, it's a mix of stuff. I can kind of see where people are putting it together from. I'd have to ask him personally. And these are no judgments. This is just how art is made. You know what I mean? And when you're going to go in to make that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of that's cool, but I think a lot of the fallout from ContraPoints getting big is that ContraPoints would describe things and say, these are ContraPoints ideas about them. And like, you can take that with a grain of salt, but I don't, you know, and it's kind of like, there was also a sense that ContraPoints might not know what the fuck she's talking about, I think. And especially in the older ContraPoints videos, you know, these are just my opinions. I just really wanted to present this like big, beautiful thing and try to get you to pay attention to like my side of the argument by not even giving you a spoonful of sugar, by making you literally LSD laced Kool-Aid, feeding it to you through a fucking beer bong, and then letting you just kind of like subtly microdose trip out with me for about an hour and a half while I talk to you through a series of televisions. That kind of shit. There's not a lot of onus on being academically accurate to that. So if you take that aesthetic and then you move into an area where you do have to be academically accurate, because you're no longer talking just about like, hey, these are some things that are happening online, these are some events, and largely this is my interpretation of something, and this is my idea about highly subjective, very cerebral things. And you start talking about something that is extraordinarily dry and extraordinarily straightforward and extraordinarily provable at times, like mathematics and economics and certain scientific issues. You really run a risk. Oh, hello. Oh my God. What in the fuck? So loud. He almost killed me. Jesus Christ. This fucking thing almost killed me. Lord Almighty. It's not to say any of it's bad content, but a lot of people, I think, took that ContraPoints idea of high fashion, high glamour, high visual aesthetic appeal and took it in directions it shouldn't be taken without a massive overhaul of the internals of it. And so when you bring it over into like Abigail Thorne talking about economics, which I don't think she has a background in, you can't just give opinions on economics. You really do have to back it up with sometimes mathematical proofs, with, you know, massive amounts of historical evidence. I mean, literally, you know, if you're going to talk about Marxism extensively in a theoretical sense, Marx already did that for multiple volumes of Capital, and even he still didn't quite get to the end of it. So, like, that's the world that you're walking into. And it's not necessarily that you can't do it, but if you do it and you fall short while you're attempting it, you can very easily end up looking like a fucking sued, because it's not hard to prove somebody's lacking when it comes to economics, especially when you pass something very simplistic like personal economics and step into like micro and macroeconomic theory. You know, the literally when you start discussing the wealth of nations, it's an entirely different ball game than things that are much easier to give, you know, an opinion on. Like I can frankly say, like, Xander Hall, how he deals with his finances is a lesson in absurdity that would take just a few minutes of any French film to try to, like, basically you could get to the end of how ridiculous it is. But if I was going to try to articulate how Trump's this or that policy negatively affected the overall bottom line for Americans, you have to go through a series of abacuses to get down to the bottom. And you can skip the line and just say, like, bad because bad, and that's fine. But the issue with that, when you start putting aesthetics on it, is the aesthetics increase the overall impact of the message regardless of the message at hand. And if you start training people to witness aesthetics and attach aesthetics, particularly in the case of like Abigail Thorne or ContraPoints, aesthetics that are endemically connected to trans identity, especially in the later half of Thorne's career when they transitioned publicly from who they were into who they are. Shut up. When they transitioned fully, the costuming and the explicit appeals to femininity and the direct appeals to particularly American gay culture and theater culture and those trappings will create a system of attaching authenticity to the presentation in a way that the presentation can be copied regardless of the accuracy of the statements at hand, or the positivity or negativity of the connotations of the statements relative to the way that the presentation is occurring. So you could have a Blair White type individual. Blair White would never. I know. But you could have, a Blair White type individual ape those aesthetics and bring them in, and then start making the same points that are different but in the same way. And then you'll have the same amount of gravitas connected to these already incorrect ideas that she has. And then you're no longer having communication between each other or with the audience about facts, but rather about aesthetics. And this aesthetic trapping, when it's disconnected from facts and from citable evidence, and you lose connection to the real, then you turn the conversation permanently into the super real or the surreal. And then you're kind of at the mercy of narrative. And once you've attached, you can't very often beat fascists when you walk into the realm of aesthetic and start fighting strictly on narrative footholds, because what fascists start with are narratives, and then they alter facts to suit the narrative. What leftists are supposed to do is start with facts and adapt the narrative to the understanding of the facts. And when you do that, you really do set yourself up for getting fucking obliterated. And I think that's what people like Unlearning Economics, just from what I remember hearing about that issue is the issue that they had with them. And it's the issue I have with people too, why I'm like, I'm not going to go into like source cited, where's the source for like, I watch, somebody like fucking Sunday even, he's just kind of fucking chattering and stuff. Like, these are my opinions, kind of free will conversation, because the aesthetic idea of certainty can't be present a lot of times with just exigent thought. When you're just spitting, you know what I mean? Sorry, exigent thought. When you're just spitting, you might not have that drapery or the drapery of aesthetic upon you, where it's like, okay, I'm directly connecting this with factuality because you are just like literally dressed up like an image of a god, and you have beautiful lighting, and you're fucking snatched to the fucking, to stretch to the fucking nines, and your makeup's good and stuff, and you're just kind of talking very confidently on a script, and you're not going to stutter, you're not going to go and step back, you're not going to reset your words. And when you say something, it's going to have way, way, way more impact than a dipshit like me live talking. And so you have to have, when you have increased aesthetics, an increased connection to the factual basis of what you're talking about, not because it defeats your message, but because it will actually increase the value of other people's messages alongside your type of presentation, who also are not going to have to follow the rules that you did not yourself follow. And that's my biggest issue with that subsection of that community. And it's not something that always happens with video essayists. It is just the biggest issue, I think, that video essayists face. And there was not enough intellectual honesty regarding their the community-wide lack of, hey, we need to cite sources with this. Hey, we need to have a strict grounding in reality, because then you can get to a point where you only start talking more about ideas than facts, which is not that bad. But the talking about ideas instead of facts very, very easily goes from talking about ideas to impressions of ideas. And from impressions of ideas, you can go straight to impressions of people. And so you end up kind of in a easy chain to having something like DJ Mule, who apes off the aesthetic of somebody like Noah Samson, who apes off the aesthetic of somebody like Philosophy Tube or ContraPoints or H Bomber Guy, and a mix of them. And so you have a natural delineation of aesthetic appeals to authority that will provide an undeserved sense of authority to the person at the end of the line, who does not have to provide any citable facts and can just go off of vibes and like half presented ideas. And it's not like, oh shit, you fucked up a little bit here at the top, this person's going to fall apart at the bottom. kind of thing, but it can also retroactively defeat the purpose of the previous ideas. You know, you can be like, oh, okay, well, if this guy's wrong, then fucking probably Samson's wrong, then maybe even like all the way up the line, are they all fucking wrong? Which is kind of what happened in those conversations. Everyone was just like, wow, video essayists are dishonest, aesthetics focused dipshits, and they don't give a shit about the truth. They just want to slander people online, which is not the case. And even I said it because I'm not immune to systems, even if I can describe them. Very much the contrary. I think I'm actually more fucking likely to fall into them because I spend so much time observing them that it's very much an abyss looks back situation consistently. And so what the big issue there was, you had a lot of people all of a sudden, you know, like 4 or 5, 6, maybe all the way up to 10 total creators drop a lot of libelous, unresearched, gossip rag style slander sheets against a certain amount of people, a smaller overall amount of people, which gave the impression of a large group of people and their extant audiences grouping up on a minority, right? Oh my God, it's all these video essayists versus this little bitty tiny chunk of live streamers, right? And the poor bebbies, poor bebby. And that created a content stream where you actually had all of these streamers being able to talk about this very small amount of video essays and kind of continue that cycle. And it went whoop like that, exploded, destroyed a few careers, kicked a few people off the internet, and then you kind of move on down the road. But I think it's just a very important thing to understand that that's a possibility of what can happen. And looking back on it, I was wrong. There's so many fucking video essayists on YouTube who not only don't even do that, but who don't even exist in this sphere, you know, and it's very easy for a bird to think his forest is the only forest in the world, so to say. You know what I mean? You start to believe that your own immediate ecosystem is emblematic of the greater system as a whole, but it's not always the case. It's very rarely the case, actually. You know what I mean? But I just wanted to kind of get out there why that's so important. I think about the unlearning economics and Abigail Thorne saying, there's a lot of people who make videos on me and I don't always have the time to watch them. And it's like, that was probably one of the most like, you know, I was listening to a lot of Abigail Thorne videos while I was doing drywall at my old house. I was doing a lot of finish work, and I remember pausing and going, what? And actually like clink, clink, clink. And I rewound. I was like, what's going on here? Why did she say that? And I didn't like immediately like, I'll never listen again or investigate, but it did stick in my mind as being like, well, why not? You know what I, like, well, what? That's strange. You know? What do you have going on? You know what I mean? Wealthy British person who acts for a living. What's distracting you from the day to day of paying attention to this other person's video? And it stuck with me. And I think it's very important. And if you have a moment like that with me, you know, go ahead and talk about it. I might disagree with you. You might be wrong, but you also might be right. You know what I mean? And feel free to share that with me. I don't mind. I literally don't. Don't try to defend me. Defending me is for me. Because also, I don't want people ending good criticism before it gets to me. I only get better if you criticize me accurately. You know what I mean? And in a way that I can actually improve from something. Like it only benefits me. And I think that was a serious character flaw with Abigail Thorne that I believe is probably still an issue with her. I think she does think she's too good for YouTube. I really do believe that, which is bad for her because she's a dog shit actress, with all due respect. I saw her. I saw the last episode of House of the Dragon, and it is so fucking jarring. It is so jarring to see her character next to all these extremely talented actors. You have a fucking whatever his name is, Bowtie Doctor Who, the lady that plays Rhaenyra, who I don't even think of outside. I think of their characters as their characters. Who really shined, Tywin Lannister shined like a diamond. Just him getting abused by these pirate fucks the entire time was such a great series of character moments. Like, he was fucking awesome, just like miserable, getting the shit slapped out of him in a pit, and then he has to act opposite Abigail Thorne, who is supposed to be some sort of pirate queen, but looks like she's like in completely good health. She has like perfect teeth. I think she has veneers. Wouldn't laugh. Like I can tell that she's trying to do somebody else's fucking job, like somebody else's version of something. And, you know, it's not to dog on her like relentlessly. I am deeply suspicious of people that use political actioning to go ahead in life, because I also want to make money off of this stuff, but I don't want to ever get to a point where I'm like using people as a jumping board to the next thing in life in a way that's going to make the tower that of people underneath me fall before. And I think really just as she transitioned from YouTube video essayists to being a full-time actress or whatever, or parts, whatever, I just think it wasn't there. I don't think that she's particularly talented and that she used this to get ahead. Which is, you know, it is what it is. I mean, if you want me to change my mind, just be better at acting. That's fucking it. I mean, it was jarring. I would give it to you if you were good. I love good art. That's pretty much it.
Hope you enjoyed your time on the West Side.